3 weeks without sound reshaped my life in a way I never expected, not because I lost my hearing, but because it suddenly returned. When a person cannot hear, others assume they are invisible to words. They think anything can be said out loud without consequence. My daughter believed that too. What I overheard the day I came home from the hospital made me wish, for one terrible moment, that the silence had never ended. At the same time, it handed me the clearest opportunity for payback I had ever been given. The steady electronic pulse of the heart monitor washed over me like a full orchestra. After 21 days trapped in absolute silence, that simple, repetitive beep sounded more beautiful than any song my late wife Linda and I had ever slow danced to in our living room. I placed my hand flat against my chest and focused on my heartbeat, amazed as it slowly aligned with the machine's rhythm. "Mr. Carter?" a voice said. The sound landed perfectly in my ears, sharp, close, unmistakable, not muffled, not distant, clear. "Can you hear me now?" Dr. Alvarez asked. I nodded quickly, afraid that if I spoke too soon, the moment might disappear. The padded headphones from the hearing test were still pressed over my ears, and every tone, every breath, every faint movement in the room registered with stunning precision. My fingers shook as I lifted the headphones away. It is all back," I said quietly, then repeated it louder, stunned by the sound of my own voice filling the room. "Everything." Dr. Alvarez smiled and tapped notes into her tablet. Even the faint scratching of the stylus across the screen startled me. It was another sound I had forgotten existed. "The swelling has fully resolved," she said. "Your hearing is testing within normal limits across all ranges." 3 weeks earlier, a job site accident had stolen my entire world of sound. A steel support beam had crashed nearby, and when a pneumatic drill malfunctioned inches from my head, the shock wave had done the damage. Nothing struck me directly, but the noise itself had been enough. Total hearing loss, the doctor said, possibly permanent. And yet there I was, absorbing the hospital's chaotic symphony, the distant ding of elevators, shoes squeaking down the hallway, voices murmuring behind doors, the soft rush of automatic doors opening and closing. Emily was going to be shocked. My daughter had moved into my house while I recovered, insisting she wanted to help. Thinking about her reaction made my chest warm. I pictured her smile, the relief on her face when she realized I could hear again. "I should call my daughter," I said, reaching toward my phone. "Let us finish the discharge paperwork first," Dr. Alvarez replied gently. "We need everything properly documented." I signed the forms with unsteady hands, barely processing the words on the page. The pen scraping against paper felt strangely loud. A nurse named Angela reviewed my follow-up appointments, but I was only half paying attention. My thoughts kept racing ahead to the moment I would walk through my front door and call Emily's name out loud. "Take things slow for the next few days," Angela advised. "Your brain needs time to adjust to processing sound again." I thanked them both and headed down the corridor, my footsteps echoing sharply with every step. Each noise felt like a small gift being handed back to me. The elevator chimed softly as it opened, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for this parking structure. Even the quiet click of the button seemed meaningful. My Toyota Camry sat exactly where Emily had parked it 3 weeks earlier. I remembered how terrified I had been that day, staring down the possibility that silence might be permanent. Turning the key now, I nearly laughed when the engine rumbled to life. The radio came on automatically, playing an old rock song Linda used to love. "Everything happens for a reason," I said aloud, repeating one of Linda's favorite sayings from our harder years together. My voice sounded unfamiliar inside the car, but wonderfully clear. The drive home took about 15 minutes, and every second felt overloaded with rediscovered sound. Traffic hummed around me, engines roared and softened, brakes squealed, a horn blared somewhere far off. I had forgotten just how loud and alive the world really was. My neighborhood looked unchanged. Tidy suburban homes, trimmed lawns, familiar driveways. Mrs. Harris was outside raking leaves, the metal scraping against concrete. A few houses down, children laughed as they played in a backyard, their voices carried by the cool spring air. One dog barked, then another answered from across the street. I pulled into my driveway and sat still for a moment, staring at the 2-story colonial home Linda and I had bought more than 3 decades earlier. Emily's car was parked by the front walk. She was inside, probably watching her afternoon programs or starting dinner. My hand hovered over the door handle. Should I call out the second I stepped inside? Or should I surprise her, walk into the kitchen and start talking like nothing had ever happened, watch the shock turn into happiness on her face? I chose the surprise. As I climbed the front steps, I heard voices from inside. Emily and her husband, Mark, were talking, most likely in the kitchen. Perfect. I slid my key into the lock as quietly as I could and eased the door open. The voices grew clearer the moment I stepped into the hallway. "God, that useless burden is finally back home," Emily said, her voice sharp and irritated. I stopped cold, my hand still gripping the doorknob. Those words hit harder than any falling beam ever could. "Burden?" Mark replied. "At least the insurance covered most of the hospital bills. Could have been worse." My legs felt weak. I pressed my back against the wall, barely breathing. This had to be a misunderstanding. My hearing had just returned. Maybe my brain was misfiring. Maybe I had imagined it. Then Emily spoke again, destroying any chance of doubt. "I just want this nightmare finished. 3 weeks of pretended to care about him every minute of the day. I'm exhausted." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. That was my daughter's voice, my own child, talking about me like I was an unwanted chore. The same daughter I had paid through college, supported through a brutal divorce, welcomed back into my home whenever she needed help. I stayed frozen in that hallway, listening as the 2 people I trusted most spoke freely, completely unaware that I could hear every word. My chest tightened, as if someone had reached inside and twisted everything out of place. The hallway seemed to stretch and shrink with each heartbeat, Emily's words echoing over and over in my head. That useless burden. 3 full weeks I had convinced myself she was there out of love, because she wanted to help her father through the worst crisis of his life. Standing there in that hallway, I finally understood how completely I had fooled myself. My knees threatened to buckle, but I forced my body to stay upright. My shoulder pressed hard against the wall. I could not move yet. I needed to hear everything. I needed to understand exactly what I was facing before I made a single move. I edged down the hallway inch by inch until I was closer to the kitchen doorway. Their voices carried easily now, and every sentence felt like another hammer driving nails into the coffin of my trust. "Sunset Manor has solid reviews," Emily said casually. "And it is not outrageously priced. The insurance settlement should easily cover the deposit." Mark laughed softly. That laugh had once sounded warm to me. Now it made my skin crawl. "Once he's out of the house, we can finally start fixing this place up. New kitchen for sure. Maybe tear down the wall between the dining room and the living room." "The real estate agent said renovations could add at least $50,000 to the value," Emily replied. "Possibly more if we redo the main bathroom properly." They were mapping out my future as if I were already gone, talking about my home like it was an inheritance waiting to be unwrapped. I tightened my grip on the wall until my knuckles burned white, concentrating on keeping my breathing silent. Still, they were not finished. "You think he suspects anything?" Mark asked. Emily scoffed. "Not a chance. He cannot hear anything. He just sits there smiling and nodding while I write him notes. Honestly, it is kind of pathetic." The contempt in her voice, my daughter's voice, made my stomach twist. Images flooded my mind. All the handwritten notes over the last 3 weeks, the exaggerated smiles, the gentle pats on my arm, meant to reassure me. It had all been a performance, every single moment. I needed proof, not for them, but for myself. I took a slow breath and coached myself silently. Act confused, act grateful. Watch their faces. See how easily they lie when they think you cannot catch them. I stepped into the kitchen, making my footsteps heavier than normal, the way someone unsure of his balance might walk. Emily and Mark were sitting at the table, and the change in them was instant and flawless. "Dad!" Emily jumped to her feet, concern spreading across her face like a mask snapping into place. She hurried over and gently took my arm. "How are you feeling? You look exhausted." 60 seconds earlier, she had called me a burden. Now her voice was soaked in false sweetness. I leaned into her touch, playing the role of the tired, grateful father. Mark raised his voice unnecessarily, the way people do when they assume someone cannot hear at all. "Hey there, Thomas. How did the appointment go today?" I shrugged and nodded vaguely, then pointed to my ears with a confused expression. Emily immediately grabbed a notepad from the counter. She had become very practiced at this routine. She wrote, "The doctor says your hearing might come back soon." That is wonderful news. I read the note and let my face brighten with hope. Inside, I studied her carefully, the deliberate widening of her eyes, the supportive squeeze of my shoulder, the rehearsed enthusiasm. Mark nodded beside her, smiling as if my recovery mattered to him at all. Mark leaned forward and added his own note. "Maybe we should start thinking about care options once you feel a little stronger. Just temporary." Emily quickly wrote underneath his words, "Just so you can have help with medications and physical therapy. Nothing permanent at all." I nodded eagerly, as though the idea thrilled me. Internally, I noted how smoothly they shifted from discussing nursing homes behind my back to presenting it as helpful medical support. This was not spontaneous. This was planned. For the next several minutes, I performed exactly as expected. I pointed at objects when they spoke aloud. I looked confused when they forgot and used their voices instead of writing. I nodded gratefully when Emily scribbled questions about whether I was hungry or needed anything. I even managed what I hoped looked like a tired but contented smile when Mark patted my back and wrote, "We are just so glad you're okay." Every interaction felt like swallowing poison, but I held my expression steady. I needed more information. I needed to know how much time I had before they put their plan into motion. Eventually, I pointed toward the stairs and wrote my own note. Very tired. Going to lie down. Emily hugged me, actually wrapped her arms around me, and said loudly, "Of course, Dad. Get all the rest you need." I walked slowly toward the staircase, fully aware of their eyes following me. Just before I reached the first step, Mark spoke again, his voice lower now, careless, but perfectly clear to my restored hearing. He bought it completely. I climbed the stairs one deliberate step at a time, gripping the banister to keep my hands from shaking. When I reached my bedroom, I closed the door softly and sat on the edge of the bed Linda and I had shared for 30 years. The house no longer felt like home. Walls that had once meant safety and family now felt like they were closing in. The daughter I had raised and loved felt like a stranger wearing Emily's face, and to her I was nothing more than an obstacle standing between her and my money. My gaze drifted to the framed photograph on the nightstand. Emily at her college graduation, her arm thrown around my shoulders, both of us smiling proudly at the camera. I did not know if that girl had changed or if she had never truly existed at all, but one thing was clear: I was not helpless. They believed they were dealing with a confused, deaf old man who would quietly accept whatever scraps of care they offered. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Linda's wedding ring still rested in the small dish on my nightstand. I lifted the ring with unsteady fingers, memories flooding back as I remembered how Linda used to twist it whenever she was deep in thought. She would have known exactly what to do about Emily. She had always been better at reading people than I ever was. From downstairs, their voices drifted through the house as they continued talking in the kitchen, relaxed and confident, believing they had endless time to design the rest of my life. I set Linda's ring carefully back in its dish and moved toward my bedroom door with deliberate caution. The house had excellent acoustics, something I knew well because I had personally overseen renovations nearly 20 years earlier. A heating vent near the staircase carried sound from the kitchen remarkably well, and if I stood in just the right spot along the hallway, I could hear everything they said. I tested each step slowly, relying on decades of muscle memory. The third stair creaked loudly on the left side, but the right edge stayed silent. Knowledge gained from a lifetime in this house was now serving a purpose I never imagined I would need. Sunset Manor is $4,800 a month, Mark was saying as I reached my listening spot. But Medicare should cover most of it if we get the right evaluations in place. Emily's voice floated clearly through the vent. The realtor said we could get at least $470,000 for the house. Once the mortgage is paid off, that leaves around $320,000 for the down payment on the place in Whitefish. My house, the home Linda and I had built together, the place where we raised our children, where she had taken her final breath. They spoke about it like it was nothing more than inventory. "What is the timeline?" Mark asked. 2 months, maybe less, Emily replied calmly. "First, we establish a pattern of incompetence. We document memory issues, confusion, incidents. Dr. Keller owes me a favor from when I helped him buy that sports car. He can write whatever evaluation we need." My grip tightened on the banister until my hands ached. They were not just planning to remove me from my home. They were preparing to manufacture evidence of mental decline. My own daughter was actively plotting to destroy my independence and reputation. Footsteps crossed the kitchen floor, and Emily's voice grew closer, I should go check on him, make sure he is not getting suspicious. I moved quickly but silently back into my bedroom and positioned myself on the bed as if I had been resting. Years of watching over Linda during long nights had taught me how to control my breathing. Emily climbed the stairs, avoiding the creaky third step. I noticed that too. "Dad," she said loudly, "I brought you some tea." I opened my eyes slowly, blinking as though disoriented. She stood in the doorway holding a steaming mug, her face carefully arranged into an expression of loving concern that made my stomach churn. She placed the cup on my nightstand right beside the dish holding Linda's ring. The symbolism was impossible to miss, my wife's memory sitting beside my daughter's deception. "You seemed tired earlier," Emily said, speaking slowly and clearly. "Are you feeling all right?" I nodded and reached for the notepad. I wrote, "Thank you. You are so good to me." The words burned as I wrote them, but Emily's smile widened. She patted my shoulder in what would have looked like affection to anyone who could not see the calculation behind her eyes. "Hey, get plenty of rest, Dad," she said. "Mark and I are handling everything." After she left, I remained still, listening to her footsteps fade away. Then her voice floated back up the stairs as she reported to Mark. "He is completely clueless, just like we planned, drinking his tea like a good little patient." Mark laughed. "Perfect. Maybe we speed things up. Why wait 2 months? Keller could do the evaluation next week. We say Dad has been having episodes, wandering around confused, forgetting to eat, leaving the stove on. Standard dementia signs." Emily hesitated, and I found myself holding my breath. "That could work," she said slowly, "if we document a few more incidents over the next couple of weeks." "Exactly," Mark replied. "By the end of the month, we could have him placed and be touring houses." I stared up at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. They were not just betraying me. They were planning to erase me, strip away my independence, my dignity, my home, and everything that gave my life meaning. But they had made one fatal mistake. They believed they were dealing with a helpless, deaf old man who would quietly accept whatever future they chose for him. They had no idea that every word they spoke was being recorded in my memory, building a case against them piece by piece. I reached for my wallet and pulled out a business card I had carried for 3 years. Robert Henley, attorney at law. He had handled Linda's estate and had been urging me to update my own will. Tomorrow I would call Robert. Tonight I would listen. They wanted to gamble with an old man's life. I was about to show them exactly how dangerous that choice could be. The card felt solid between my fingers as I walked into my study, the room where I had managed our family finances for 3 decades. Robert's phone number was printed in conservative blue ink, matching the folders where I stored important documents. I opened the filing cabinet and began pulling out years of carefully organized records, bank statements, tax returns, receipts, the paper trail of a lifetime spent providing for others. What I found made my chest tighten with pain. Emily's wedding receipt. $35,000. I remember draining part of my retirement account and working extra hours for months to recover the loss. "Make it perfect, Dad," she had said. "Mom would want everything beautiful." Student loan statements followed. $28,000 in payments I had made after her graduation. I remembered her sitting at my kitchen table at 20 years old, crying and terrified. "Dad, I cannot finish school. The debt is too much." I had written those checks without hesitation. An apartment down payment, $15,000, another chunk of my retirement, another sacrifice made gladly because she was my daughter and needed help. Then I found something else. Linda's medical bills from her final months, $67,000 in treatments insurance did not cover. Bills I had paid alone while Emily found excuses to stay away. "I cannot handle seeing her like this, Dad," she had said. The figures on the page began to blur as my hand started shaking. Well over $100,000 given freely, willingly, to a daughter who now referred to me as a burden. I closed my eyes for a moment, then pulled a photograph from the drawer. It was from Emily's college graduation. She stood between Linda and me, her arms wrapped around our shoulders, her smile glowing with promise and gratitude. "I could not have done this without you, Dad," she had whispered that day. "I will never forget how much you sacrificed." That memory unlocked others, pouring in all at once, unstoppable. Emily at 19, sobbing over student loan bills spread across my kitchen table. "Everyone else has parents who help them," she had cried, never asking how many extra shifts I was already working or which vacation Linda and I had quietly canceled so I could afford her textbooks. Emily at 25, planning her wedding. "You will always have a home with us, Dad. Always, I promise." Mark had nodded beside her, his thanks polished and rehearsed even back then. Emily at 32, absent during Linda's funeral planning because Mark had a work conference. "You understand, right?" she had said. "This is a big promotion opportunity. Mom would want him to go." I had stood alone in the funeral director's office while my daughter networked 2 states away, and Linda, God help me, during her final weeks, asking the question that shattered me every time. Where is Emily today? And me, lying with ease I hated myself for. "She will come tomorrow, sweetheart. She is just busy." Linda had nodded, choosing to believe the lie because she wanted so badly to believe her daughter still cared. The pattern was impossible to ignore now. Emily taking, always taking, paying with promises meant for some undefined future, and me confusing generosity with love, enabling every request. I opened my most recent bank statement and compared it to the cost of long-term care. Sunset Manor, at $4,800 a month, would drain my remaining savings in less than 4 years. But that was not their concern. They wanted the house proceeds immediately for their new life in Whitefish. When was the last time Emily had called just to talk? When had she asked about my day, my health, my loneliness? Every conversation ended the same way, with a request: help with Mark's car payment, money for a vacation, a contribution toward their anniversary cruise. Linda had seen it long before I did. She had tried to warn me gently. After I paid for Emily's 3rd car repair in 6 months, Linda had said quietly, "You are creating dependency, Thomas. She needs to learn how to solve her own problems." "She is our daughter," I had argued. "We help family." "There is a difference between helping and enabling," Linda had replied, "and there is a difference between gratitude and entitlement." Standing there now, surrounded by proof of my misplaced generosity, I finally understood what my wife had been trying to tell me. Emily had not learned to appreciate my help. She had learned to expect it. And when I became the one who needed care, she saw only an obstacle standing between her and what she believed was already hers. I looked at the graduation photo one last time, then turned it face down in the drawer. The girl in that picture was gone. In her place stood a woman willing to fabricate mental illness, conspire with a doctor, and sell the home where her mother had died, all to fund her own ambitions. But I was not confused. I was angry. And first thing in the morning, I was going to call Robert Henley. I reached for my old address book and flipped to the H section, where I had written Robert's home number years earlier. Some conversations could not wait for office hours. Emily had taught me a hard lesson about family loyalty. Now I was going to teach her one about consequences. I woke the next morning with Robert Henley's business card still clenched in my hand. The red digits on my alarm clock read 7:30 in the morning. From downstairs, I could already hear Emily moving around the kitchen, clattering pans, performing what she likely considered her daily role as the devoted daughter. Through my bedroom window, I watched Mark loading items into their car. Their voices drifted up through the cool morning air. Something about errands and shopping. Perfect. I needed them gone. I made my way downstairs, exaggerating my movements, walking with the cautious, uncertain steps of someone still adjusting to hearing loss. Emily looked up from the stove where she was scrambling eggs, her smile bright and carefully constructed. "Good morning, Dad," she called out loudly. "I made your favorite breakfast." I nodded and pointed toward my ears with a confused expression. She immediately reached for her notepad and wrote, "Mark and I are going shopping this morning. Will you be okay by yourself for a few hours?" I wrote back, "Yes, thank you for taking such good care of me." The lie tasted bitter, but the pleased look on her face told me she believed it completely. She leaned in and kissed my forehead, a gesture that once would have warmed my heart and now made my skin crawl. And as she turned away, confident I was still helpless and unaware, I began counting the minutes until they left. "She said we would be back around 3, Emily told me, speaking slowly and clearly, the way people do when they believe someone cannot hear properly. "There is soup in the refrigerator if you get hungry." Once their car pulled out of the driveway at 10:45, I waited exactly 15 minutes before picking up the phone. Some habits from my years as an engineer never faded. Always confirm your timing. Always verify your assumptions. Always leave yourself a backup plan. Robert Henley answered on the second ring. "Henley Law Office." "Robert, it is Thomas Carter. I need to change my will immediately." There was a brief pause on the line. "Thomas, I was under the impression you were dealing with hearing issues." "It is complicated," I said evenly. "Can you see me today? This cannot wait." "Well," he hesitated, "I could fit you in around 11:30. But Thomas, are you sure you are—" I have never been more certain of anything in my life. The drive into downtown took just over 10 minutes. Robert's office was housed in a converted Victorian on Alder Street, the same place where he had guided me through Linda's estate 5 years earlier. His secretary looked startled when I walked in on my own. "Mr. Carter, it is wonderful to see you up and about," she said at a normal volume. "Much better," I replied. "Thank you." Robert stepped out of his office moments later. He was tall, his hair gray at the temples, a man who had handled my legal affairs for more than a decade. He shook my hand firmly, concern etched across his face. "Thomas, I have to ask," he said carefully, "are you experiencing any confusion, any memory issues?" I met his gaze without hesitation. "Robert, I want my will changed so that everything goes to my son, Michael. Everything. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it. And your daughter? He asked quietly. Emily receives $1,000, I said. For reasons she will understand. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he did not argue. He had practiced law long enough to know when a client's mind was made up. This is a significant departure from your current will, he said. Are you absolutely certain? Draft the documents, I replied. I will sign them today. For the next hour, we worked through every detail. The house, valued at approximately $450,000. My savings account holding $180,000. An investment portfolio worth another $120,000. An estate totaling roughly $750,000, now redirected away from the daughter who had called me a burden. I will need witnesses for the signing, Robert said, reviewing the final draft. Use your staff, I replied, and I want a copy to take home with me today. That is unusual, he admitted, but it can be done. By 1:15, the new will was signed, witnessed, and properly filed. I left his office with a sealed envelope tucked under my arm, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I had taken something away from Emily, but because I had reclaimed control of my own life. Back home, I placed the envelope squarely on the kitchen counter, impossible to miss. Then I settled into my recliner in the living room with the newspaper, positioning myself where I could hear everything that happened in the kitchen. At 2:45, car doors slammed in the driveway. I hope he did not try to cook while we were gone, Emily said as the front door opened. Shopping bags rustled. Footsteps moved toward the kitchen. Then silence. A sharp intake of breath cut through the house like glass snapping. The envelope crackled as it was torn open. From my chair, hidden behind the newspaper, I heard every sound. The rip of paper, the frantic shuffle of documents, then a stillness so heavy it felt suffocating. Mark, Emily whispered. Mark, get in here now. Footsteps pounded across the floor. What is wrong? You look like you just... Look at this. Paper rustled violently. That old bastard changed his will. I held perfectly still, barely breathing. What do you mean he changed it? Mark demanded. Emily read aloud, her voice shaking with fury. To Michael Carter, my son, I leave my entire estate, including but not limited to my residence, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and personal property. That is not possible, Mark said. When did he do this? It is dated today, she snapped. Today, Mark. While we were out playing helpful caretakers, he was downtown signing away our future. A chair scraped hard against the floor. Someone began pacing. How much are we talking about? Mark asked. The house alone is worth $450, Emily said, her voice cracking. Add his savings, his investments. We just lost over $700,000 to my brother, who has not visited in 2 years. There has to be a way to fight this, Mark said urgently. Mental incompetence, undue influence, something. Emily let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, there is more. Listen to this part. To Emily Carter Miller, my daughter, I leave the sum of $1,000 for reasons she will understand. The kitchen went dead silent except for heavy breathing. For reasons she will understand? Mark repeated slowly. What does that even mean? It means he knows, Emily said coldly. Somehow, that senile old man figured out exactly what we were planning. That is impossible, Mark insisted. He cannot hear anything. We have been talking right in front of him for weeks." "Then explain this," Emily snapped, slamming the papers onto the counter. Behind my newspaper, I closed my eyes. They still thought I was helpless. They were very, very wrong. Explain how a confused, deaf old man managed to get himself to a lawyer's office and rewrite his entire will without us knowing. I forced my breathing to slow and even out, the steady rhythm of someone dozing peacefully in a chair. Every instinct urged me to smile, to laugh, to expose the trap I had laid so carefully, but it was far too early for that. The game was not finished. All right, Mark said, his voice strained with force, calm. "Let us think this through logically. Maybe he is not as out of it as we assumed. Maybe he has been testing us." "Testing us?" Emily's voice shot up, sharp and dangerous. "Testing us by pretending to be deaf while we planned his future? That manipulative son of a—" "Lower your voice," Mark hissed. "He is right in the next room." "I do not care if he hears me," Emily snapped. "If he has been playing games, then the games are over." Footsteps moved toward the living room. I shut my eyes completely and let the newspaper sag a little in my hands, arranging myself into the picture of an elderly man drifting in and out of sleep. "Dad," Emily called, her voice suddenly coated in artificial sweetness, though I could hear the tension underneath. "Dad, are you awake?" I stirred slowly, blinking as if confused, lifting my head just enough to look at her. Her face was flushed, her jaw tight, her hands clenched at her sides. "Oh, Emily," I said softly, "did you have a nice shopping trip?" She stared at me, searching my face for any crack in the performance. "Dad," she said carefully, "did you go anywhere today while we were out?" I tilted my head, genuinely puzzled. "Go somewhere? No, I stayed right here." "Why would I go anywhere?" "You did not visit anyone? Make any phone calls?" "Phone calls?" I touched my ears with a small, sad smile. "Sweetheart, I cannot hear well enough for phone calls right now. You know that." Her jaw tightened, but she forced her face back into something resembling concern. "Of course, I forgot. I am sorry, Dad." She turned and walked back into the kitchen. I heard her whisper urgently to Mark. "Either he is the best actor on the planet, or we are missing something." "What do you want to do?" Mark asked. "Call Dr. Keller. Tell him we need those papers tomorrow, not next week. If Dad is playing games, we will show him exactly how this one ends." "And if he really is confused?" Mark asked. "If the will thing was just a coincidence?" Emily laughed, cold and sharp as winter air. "Then he will not remember signing it anyway, will he? Either way, by Friday he will be declared incompetent, and we will contest the will as the product of a diseased mind." Sitting there with the newspaper trembling slightly in my hands, I felt a slow smile tug at the corners of my mouth. Then I heard Emily jabbing numbers into the kitchen phone. From the pacing, the throat clearing, I knew she was preparing for a difficult call. "Michael, thank God you answered." Her voice climbed into a strained pitch. "No, everything is not fine. Dad has completely lost his mind." I shifted slightly in my chair, angling myself just enough to hear everything while keeping my eyes closed. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. "He changed his will, Michael. Everything goes to you now. The house, the savings, all of it. He cut me out completely except for some insulting $1,000 token." I could not hear my son clearly through the phone, but Emily's answers told me enough. "When? Today?" "Yes, today," she snapped. "While Mark and I were out buying groceries like responsible caregivers, He was downtown signing away my future. Her voice cracked, and if I had not already heard her real feelings, I might have believed the tears were genuine. I have sacrificed everything to take care of him, Michael. Everything. I moved in here. I put my life on hold, and this is how he repays me. She paused, listening, then pressed harder. He is not mentally competent anymore. You have to understand that. This will is the product of a diseased mind. You need to refuse the inheritance. It should be divided fairly between us. Whatever Michael said next made her go quiet. Through the doorway, I could see her face growing red. Good reasons, she suddenly exploded. What good reasons could he possibly have? I am his daughter. I have been the one here taking care of him while you enjoy your comfortable life in Seattle. Another pause. Then her voice dropped into something icy and dangerous. How dare you judge me, Michael? You visit once a year if we are lucky, send a Christmas card, and suddenly you're an expert on what Dad needs? The phone slammed down hard. Footsteps stormed across the kitchen. Perfect timing. I shifted in my chair and looked around with the unfocused expression of someone waking abruptly. Emily, I said confused. Was someone on the phone? I thought I heard voices. She spun around, rage still burning in her face, then scrambled to rearrange her features into concern. Oh, Dad, yes, I was just talking to Michael. I blinked, touching my ears again. Michael? My son? Is everything all right? You look upset. Dad, she said tightly, we need to talk about your will, about the changes you made today. I stared at her blankly. My will? I do not understand. What changes? I watched frustration flicker behind her eyes as she realized she would have to explain everything to someone she believed was confused and could not hear properly. Never mind, she snapped, then softened her tone. It is complicated. Why do you not just rest? If you are sure everything is all right, I said slowly, pushing myself to my feet, I think I will go lie down. All this excitement has made me tired. I made my way upstairs with the careful, deliberate steps of an elderly man. But once I reached my bedroom and closed the door, the act dropped away. My phone was in the nightstand drawer, a phone Emily did not even know existed. I dialed Michael's number from memory. Hello? His voice was cautious. Michael, I said quietly. It is Dad. There was a long pause. Dad, Emily said you were having hearing problems. How are you calling me? Son, I need you to sit down, I said. What I am about to tell you will shock you, and I need you to keep this between us. Can you promise me that? Of course, Dad. What is going on? I took a deep breath. Michael, I can hear perfectly. My hearing came back 3 days ago, completely. I did not tell Emily because... I paused, knowing the next words would be hard for him to hear. Because I discovered what she really thinks of me. What do you mean? She called me a burden, Michael, I said quietly. I heard her and Mark planning to put me in a nursing home so they could sell this house and use my money to buy property in Whitefish. I heard my son inhale sharply on the other end of the line. Dad, are you absolutely certain about all of this? Son, I heard every single word, I said quietly. They have been planning this for weeks, maybe longer. They even have a doctor friend lined up who is willing to falsify medical evaluations so I can be declared incompetent. The line went silent for so long that I thought the call had dropped. Michael, I asked, are you still there? I am here, Dad, he said finally. I am just trying to process this." "That call Emily just made to you," I continued. "She was trying to convince you to refuse the inheritance, was she not?" "That is exactly what she was doing. She wants you to believe I am losing my mind, so you will voluntarily give up what I chose to leave you." "Yes," he admitted. "That is exactly what she was pushing for." "I am sorry, son," I said. "I should never have put you in the middle of this." "No," Michael replied quickly. "I am sorry. I should have known something was wrong. I should have visited more. I should have paid closer attention." "You have your own family and your own life," I told him. "I understood that. But right now, I need your help." From downstairs, I could hear Emily's voice again, sharp and urgent as she spoke with Mark. The tone alone told me whatever they were planning next was not good. "Michael," I said, lowering my voice, "they are moving faster than I expected. I think they are going to try something tomorrow." He inhaled slowly. "Dad, you said you can hear me perfectly?" "Yes," I said firmly. "My hearing came back completely 3 days ago. I have been pretending otherwise because of what I discovered about your sister." There was disbelief in his voice. "Then why not tell her? Why keep pretending?" "Because the first thing I heard when I walked back into this house was Emily calling me that old burden, while she and Mark planned to send me to Sunset Manor," I said. "She calculated the value of this house down to the dollar, $470,000 after the mortgage payoff. They want to sell it and use my money to buy a place in Whitefish." Michael went quiet again, then spoke through clenched disbelief. "She actually said that? Called you a burden?" "Those were her exact words," I replied. "And that is not even the worst of it. They have a doctor friend, Dr. Keller, who is willing to fabricate evaluations declaring me mentally unfit. Their plan is to have me ruled incompetent and then challenge every legal decision I have made." "Dad, that is elder abuse," Michael said hoarsely. "That is fraud." "Now you understand why I changed the will," I said. "I had to protect myself before they could carry out their plan." There was a pause. Then I added, "And there is more. Tonight I heard them say, 'Dr. Keller confirmed Friday morning.' They are accelerating everything. I could hear my son breathing heavily, absorbing the full weight of what his sister was willing to do. 'I feel sick,' he said. 'After everything you did for her, paying for her wedding, her loans, helping her again and again, this is how she repays you?' Your mother always saw through Emily," I said quietly. "I should have listened to Linda more closely." "What do you need me to do?" Michael asked. "Do you want me to come out there? I can take Friday off work." "Not yet," I said. "When Emily calls you back, and she will, I want you to play along. Tell her you are worried about my mental state. Maybe even suggest you are thinking of visiting this weekend." "You want me to lie to her?" "I want you to give her enough rope to hang herself with," I replied calmly. "She is desperate now, and desperate people make mistakes." From downstairs, voices rose again. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "Hold on," I whispered. "They are saying more." Emily's voice carried clearly through the heating vent. "Dr. Keller confirmed Friday morning at 10. He will do the evaluation here at the house." Mark responded. 10. "What if the old man refuses to cooperate?" "He will not have a choice," Emily snapped. "Keller will document signs of dementia, confusion, memory loss, inability to make rational decisions. With the will change as proof of instability, we will have grounds for a competency hearing." And Michael? Mark asked. I planted doubts tonight, she said. If I call him again tomorrow with more concerns, he might even support having Dad evaluated. I brought the phone back to my mouth, my voice hard. Michael, did you hear that? I heard enough, he said. Dad, they are planning to have you declared incompetent on Friday morning. We cannot let that happen. No, I agreed, but I have a plan. When Emily calls you tomorrow, I want you to sound concerned. Tell her you think an evaluation might be a good idea. Michael hesitated. I do not like lying to family. She stopped being family the moment she decided to steal my independence and sell my home, I said. She is counting on your decency to help her commit fraud. He exhaled slowly. You were right. What else do you need from me? Keep playing the worried son until I give you the signal, I said, and document everything she tells you, every lie, every manipulation. We may need it. What are you planning, Dad? I looked around my bedroom, Linda's jewelry box on the dresser, our wedding photograph on the nightstand, the life we built inside these walls that Emily wanted to liquidate. I am planning to remind your sister exactly who she has been underestimating, I said. She thinks she is dealing with a confused, helpless old man. Tomorrow, she is going to learn how wrong she is. Be careful, Michael warned. If she is desperate enough to commit fraud, there is no telling what else she might do. Do not worry about me, son, I replied evenly. I survived 30 years as a construction engineer and 5 years of grief. I am not as fragile as she believes. I can handle one greedy daughter and her useless husband. After we ended the call, I sat alone in the dark of my bedroom, listening as Emily and Mark continued plotting what they believed would be their final move against my freedom. They had no idea that the man they saw as their victim had been listening to every word, quietly documenting every lie, and preparing a surprise of his own. Through the slats of the kitchen window blinds, I watched them load shopping bags into their gray 2018 Ford Escape. Emily waved her phone angrily as she talked, her gestures sharp and frantic, while Mark checked his watch for the third time in less than 2 minutes. We'll be back by 2, Mark called toward the house, unaware I could hear him perfectly. And do not forget, Dr. Keller is coming tomorrow at 10 sharp. Emily added, her voice coated in the artificial sweetness she had perfected over the last few days. Dad, we're heading out to run errands. We'll be back soon. I stayed completely still until their car disappeared around the corner. Then I finally allowed myself to smile. 3 hours, more than enough time. I walked slowly through the house, taking inventory. Emily had settled into the guest bedroom as if it were her own. Her dresser drawers overflowed with expensive clothing, silk blouses, designer jeans, carefully folded sweaters. Jewelry sparkled even in the dim light. On her nightstand, receipts lay scattered, all paid for with credit cards that listed my home as the billing address. Mark had claimed the guest closet. 3 tailored business suits hung neatly beside golf clubs and an expensive laptop. There were electronic gadgets I did not even recognize. The price tag still attached to his golf bag alone would have covered a family's groceries for a month. From the basement storage room, I retrieved 2 large leather suitcases. Ones Linda and I had used on our anniversary trips to Yellowstone. The leather was still soft. The brass buckles still shined. Those bags had once carried laughter and memories. Today, they would carry something very different. I started with Emily's belongings. I folded each item carefully, methodically, the same way I used to handle architectural plans when precision mattered. Her wedding dress, still sealed in plastic, photo albums from her college years, paid for with my retirement savings, the jewelry box I had given her on her 16th birthday, now filled with pieces I had never seen her wear. Mark's things went into the second suitcase, his electronics, his golf accessories, the leather portfolio stuffed with resumes and business cards from jobs he had never managed to keep for long. Everything they had brought into my home, everything they had accumulated while living under my roof and quietly planning to take it from me. As I packed, Linda's voice echoed in my memory, from Emily's last visit before her wedding. "That girl takes everything you give her and always asks for more," Linda had said gently. "When will it ever be enough, Thomas?" "Never," I said out loud to the empty room. "It will never be enough." I carried both suitcases into the living room and set them directly in front of the couch, impossible to miss. Two expensive pieces of luggage sitting like silent accusations in the center of the room. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "How are you holding up, Dad? Still on track for this afternoon?" I typed back, "Everything's ready. Wish me luck." His reply came almost instantly. "You've got this. She deserves everything that's coming." I settled into my recliner with the newspaper, positioning myself so I had a clear view of the front door. The room looked exactly right. My chair, Linda's china cabinet, family photos lined neatly along the mantel, and those two suitcases standing front and center like monuments to betrayal. At 1:45, I heard the familiar sound of their car pulling into the driveway. Car doors slammed. Emily laughed about something Mark had said. Shopping bags rustled as they approached the front door. I took a slow breath and lowered the newspaper just enough, preparing for the performance of a lifetime. The key turned in the lock. "I think we got everything for tomorrow's—" Emily's voice cut off abruptly as the door swung open. The sound of shopping bags hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the house like gunshots. "What the hell?" Mark said sharply. "Emily, are those our suitcases?" I heard her footsteps rush forward, her breathing turning fast and shallow. "Dad?" she called, panic creeping into her voice. "Dad, what is this?" I kept the newspaper raised, savoring every second, maintaining the image of an old man quietly reading. Then something remarkable happened. Emily's voice shifted completely, filling with genuine excitement. "Oh, my God," she said, almost laughing. "Mark, he finally packed." "You mean the old man is actually leaving?" Mark said, catching on instantly. His voice lit up with joy. "I cannot believe it. Finally." Emily was laughing now. "He is going to Sunset Manor," Emily said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "We do not even have to go through with the whole Dr. Keller thing." "This is perfect," Mark replied, pacing the room now, his steps fast and energized. "We can start renovations next week. Maybe even call that contractor in Whitefish." $700,000, Mark?" Emily said breathlessly. "We are finally going to be free." They were celebrating, truly celebrating what they believed was my surrender, my quiet disappearance from my own life. Every cruel, careless word confirmed exactly who they were. I slowly lowered the newspaper and looked straight at them. "No, sweetheart," I said, my voice perfectly clear, perfectly calm. "You are the ones leaving my house." Emily's face drained of color. The smile froze on her lips, then collapsed into pure horror. "Dad," she whispered, did you hear me?" Mark stumbled backward toward the door, his eyes wide as realization slammed into him. "Thomas," he asked, his voice tight, "how long have you been able to hear?" I stood up slowly, my joints feeling steadier than they had in years. "Every single word," I said evenly, "since I came home from the hospital 3 days ago." Emily clapped a hand over her mouth. "You heard everything? Every conversation? Every time we talked about you being a burden? About selling the house? About having you declared incompetent so we could take control?" Mark's face shifted from pale to flushed red. "Thomas, we were just frustrated. We did not mean—" "You meant every word," I cut in. "I know exactly who you are now, both of you." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but I could see the calculation flickering behind them. "Dad, we can explain. We were just worried about you. We thought you needed more care than we could handle. You calculated losing $700,000 of my money like it already belonged to you," I replied coldly. "You planned to use forged medical evaluations to strip me of my independence." "That was Mark's idea," Emily said quickly, pointing at him. "I would never do that to you." "You called me a burden in my own house," I said quietly, "while planning to steal my life." Mark's shock curdled into anger. "You cannot just kick us out. We have nowhere to go. We gave up our apartment to take care of you. You moved in because you could not afford your own place," I answered calmly. "Now you will learn what it is like to find one without my help." Emily dropped to her knees beside my chair, grabbing my arm with both hands. "Please, Dad, I am your daughter. I made a mistake. I love you." I looked down at her. This woman who had taken everything I ever gave and still demanded more, who had planned to destroy my dignity for money. "If you loved me," I said steadily, "you would not have called me a burden. You would not have planned to declare me insane. You would not have celebrated what you thought was my defeat." I gestured toward the suitcases. "You have everything you brought into my house, everything you accumulated while living here rent-free and plotting my future. That is more than you deserve." Emily's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to my arm. "Dad, you are breaking my heart," she sobbed. "I am your little girl. I am your daughter." Her voice cracked with what might have sounded sincere to someone who had not heard her cheering just minutes earlier. "Please do not do this," she begged. "Mom would be devastated to see you treat your own daughter this way." That crossed the line. I looked down at her, my expression hard as winter frost. "Your mother warned me about you before she died, Emily. She said, 'Watch her closely, Thomas. She only shows up when she needs something.'" Emily's face went ashen. "She never said that. You are lying." "She said it after you asked me for $5,000 for your anniversary cruise while she was in hospice care." "That is not—" "I never—" Emily's voice faltered as the memory caught up with her. Mark stepped forward, trying a different tactic. "Thomas, listen. We all made mistakes, but we are family. We can work this out." Emily seized on that instantly, her tears stopping as abruptly as they had started. "Yes, Dad, we can fix this. I will take better care of you. We will cancel everything with Dr. Keller. We will change." "You already showed me who you are," I said calmly, "and I believe you." "People change," Emily cried, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "Please, give us another chance." Mark's mask cracked completely. His face reddened as his voice rose. "You cannot just throw us out like garbage. We have legal rights." "Actually, Mark," I replied evenly, "you have none. You are not tenants. You have no claim to this house. You are guests who have overstayed their welcome. We will contest the will, he snapped, jabbing a finger at me. We will prove you are mentally incompetent. No sane man cuts his own daughter out. I smiled, calm and controlled. Good luck. My lawyer has recordings of every conversation you had about your plans. The blood drained from Mark's face. What recordings? You cannot legally record private conversations. There were no recordings, but the effect was immediate. Emily's eyes went wide with terror. Dad, please, Emily pleaded, her voice trembling. We were under a lot of stress. We did not mean any of it. We were scared and said things we did not really mean. You meant every single word, I replied calmly. You calculated my net worth down to the last dollar. You planned my future as if I were already dead. Mark's desperation was turning sharp and aggressive. Where are we supposed to go? He snapped. We do not have any money. We gave up our apartment to take care of you. You moved in because you could not afford rent, I corrected evenly, and that is no longer my responsibility. Emily tried one last tactic. Her voice softened into that familiar pleading tone she used as a child whenever she wanted something. Dad, I gave up my entire life to take care of you. I sacrificed everything. I loved Mom just as much as you did. You skipped your mother's funeral planning because Mark had a work party in Denver, I said quietly. You told me it was a big opportunity and that your mother would have wanted him to attend. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. You visited your mother twice during her final month in hospice, I continued. Twice. I was there every single day listening to her ask where her daughter was. I could not handle seeing her like that, Emily whispered. But you could handle planning to put me in a nursing home, I replied, so you could sell the house where she died? Something hardened in her expression. The last trace of the caring daughter act vanished completely. Fine, she said, standing and brushing off her knees. We will leave, but you will regret this, Dad. You will be completely alone, and when you need help, we will not be there. I have been alone for 3 years, I answered calmly. At least now I will not have to pretend otherwise. Mark grabbed one of the suitcases with unnecessary force. This is insane. You are throwing away your own family. No, I said, watching them struggle with their luggage. You threw away your family the moment you decided I was nothing more than an obstacle to your inheritance. Emily lifted the second suitcase, her face twisted with resentment. You will see. You will find out what it really means to be alone. I am looking forward to it. They moved toward the front door, their expensive belongings weighing them down like anchors. At the threshold, Emily turned back one last time. If you change your mind— I will not, I interrupted, and do not ever call me asking for money. The door slammed shut behind them, the sound ringing through the house like a final bell. I stood at the living room window and watched as Emily and Mark struggled to load their suitcases into the Ford Escape. Mark had to rearrange bags again and again, muttering curses under his breath. Emily sat stiffly in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, her face frozen in cold fury. At last, the doors slammed. The engine started. They pulled out of my driveway for the final time. I watched until their taillights vanished around the corner. Then I kept watching the empty street for several minutes more. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had known before. It was not the suffocating quiet of deafness, and not the tense hush of a house filled with hidden hostility. It was real peace. The house itself seemed to exhale, releasing years of built-up strain. I walked slowly through each room, noticing what was missing. Emily's expensive lotions were gone from the bathroom counter. Mark's golf magazines no longer cluttered the coffee table. The guest bedroom looked clean and spacious, without clothes tossed over every surface. In the kitchen, I found the shopping bags they had dropped in their excitement. I carried them straight to the trash without looking inside. Whatever they had bought to celebrate my supposed defeat could rot along with the rest of their plans. I sat down in my recliner, in my living room, in my house, and felt something I had not experienced since Linda died. Contentment. No one was scheming behind my back. No one was calculating my worth. No one was deciding my future for me. I was alone, yes, but I was free. My phone buzzed. Michael. Dad, how did it go? Are you okay? They are gone, I said. It is over. How do you feel? He asked. Are you sure you're all right? I thought about it carefully. Relief, certainly, vindication. But more than anything, I felt lighter, as if I had been carrying a weight for years without realizing it. I feel free for the first time since your mother passed away. I am proud of you, Dad, Michael said. Standing up for yourself like that, Mom would be proud too. I should have listened to her warnings about Emily years ago. Maybe, he replied gently, but you gave her every chance to be the daughter you deserved. That is not failure, Dad. That is love. We talked for another 20 minutes. Michael promised to visit soon, maybe bring the kids for a weekend. They should know their grandfather, he said, the real one. After we hung up, I made myself a simple dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, and ate at the kitchen table while watching the sun sink toward the horizon. No one criticized the food. No one made snide comments. No one calculated the cost of my meal or speculated about when I would be too old to cook. I thought of Linda's voice, the way she used to say, "You deserve better than that, Thomas." She had been talking about Emily even then. I had just been too blind to see it. After dinner, I walked through the house once more, this time truly seeing it. The photographs on the mantel told a different story to me now. There were pictures of Michael with his children, snapshots of Linda and me on our anniversaries, and faded holiday photos from years ago, back when Emily had still been young enough to love her family for who they were, not for what she could extract from them. I stood there for a long moment, then gently removed the photos that included her. I did not do it out of spite. I did it because I wanted to remember the good years without poisoning them with the truth of how everything had ended. I placed the pictures carefully into a drawer. The mantel looked cleaner afterward, lighter, more honest. In my study, I sat down at the desk and pulled out a legal pad. For the first time in a long while, I began writing plans instead of reacting to crises. Call the bank and remove Emily as my emergency contact. Update my medical directives and power of attorney. Schedule lunch with old friends I had neglected while she lived under my roof. Plan a trip to Seattle to see Michael and the grandchildren. As the list grew, I realized something important. I was planning a future again, not just surviving day to day, not bracing for the next demand or manipulation, actually planning a life. As I got ready for bed, Linda's voice came back to me, something she used to say during our early years together. "Some people mistake kindness for weakness, Thomas," she would tell me. "They are wrong. Kindness is strength. And when you finally stop giving it to people who do not deserve it, that is wisdom. It had taken me far too long, but I had finally learned the difference. Lying in bed, I listened to the quiet, not the heavy silence of deafness, not the tense stillness of a house filled with scheming whispers and pacing footsteps. Just calm, just peace, the steady sound of my own breathing in a home that belonged to me. Tomorrow, I would wake up in a house where I was not tolerated or exploited, but where I belonged, where every decision was mine. I smiled in the dark and slept better than I had in years. Earlier that evening, I had revisited the truth I could no longer avoid. I had enabled every request because I had confused generosity with love. When I compared my bank statements to the nursing home costs they had discussed, the math was brutal. Sunset Manor at $4,800 a month would have drained my savings in less than 4 years. But that had never mattered to them. What they wanted was the house money up front, the payout that would fund their new life in Whitefish. My phone had sat on my desk all night, silent and accusing. When had Emily last called just to talk? When had she asked how I was feeling? How lonely the house felt after Linda died? Every conversation over the past 5 years had ended the same way, with a request: help with Mark's car payment, money for a vacation, a contribution toward an anniversary cruise. I had told myself I was being a good father, that I was honoring Linda's memory by taking care of our daughter. But Linda had seen the truth long before I did. After I paid for Emily's 3rd car repair in 6 months, Linda had said quietly, "You are creating dependency, Thomas. She needs to learn how to solve her own problems." "She is our daughter," I had argued. "We help family." "There is a difference between helping and enabling," Linda had replied, "and there is a difference between gratitude and entitlement." Surrounded by proof of my misplaced generosity, I finally understood what she had been trying to tell me. Emily had never learned to appreciate my help. She had learned to expect it. And when the balance shifted, when I became the one who needed care, she saw only a burden standing between her and what she believed was already hers. I took one last look at the photograph I had removed and placed it face down in the drawer. The girl in that picture, if she had ever truly existed, was gone. In her place stood a woman willing to fabricate mental illness, conspire with a crooked doctor, and sell the house where her mother had died to fund her own ambitions. They had thought they were clever, planning my future while I sat upstairs, deaf and compliant. They believed they were dealing with a confused old man who would gratefully accept whatever scraps of care they offered. They were wrong. I was not confused. I had been angry, and now I was resolved. I reached for my address book and flipped to the H section, where I had written Robert Henley's home number years ago. Some conversations could not wait for business hours. Emily had taught me a painful lesson about family loyalty. Now, I had taught myself one about consequences.